Good morning, Mets fans, and welcome to a Monday edition of Driving with Mr. Met. I am Mr. Met, and it feels like it's been forever since I've recorded a video. I don't remember when the last video was. I think it was Monday, a week ago today, which sounds about right. I think the awards season video was the last one I recorded, but I'm back today, ever so briefly. I have another trip that I'm heading toward now, but wanted to get a little video recorded before then. I'm going to talk about what's going on with the awards and that the Mets took home, the sign gate, cheat gate, whatever, with the Astros, and how the new Mets manager might play into that, and give a little bit of a preview for what this week might look like. So first and foremost, last week I made some predictions about Mets taking home hardware. They weren't difficult predictions to make. Let's be honest. I think everybody knew that both Alonso and DeGrom were going to take home hardware in the National League. I had my MVP selections correct. I had my AL Cy Young incorrect. I thought it was going to be Cole. It was Verlander. I had my Rookies of the Year correct in both sides, and Manager of the Year was a little bit of a squirrely one. Whatever. It doesn't matter. The point here is that the Mets have not one but two individual award winners in Major League Baseball, and deservedly so. The only thing I can complain about, if I have to complain about anything, is that Alonso didn't win unanimously. And I will give a lot of credit to the reporter who voted for Mike Soroka. He wrote a piece in The Athletic, and I don't subscribe to The Athletic, although I'm really thinking about getting a subscription because it seems like there's a lot of good writing there. But in any event, he wrote a piece on there basically saying, don't hate me, Mets fans. I had a good reason for this, and he goes on to explain himself, and I didn't read the piece, like I said, but I've read enough of the summary of it that I think this dude is really smart for doing what he did, and I can't fault him for the logic that he used in his picking Mike Soroka. So he's wrong, but at least he has a good reason for it. You know, sort of like the best villains in movies and in comic books and whatnot. They don't know they're villains, right? They think what they're doing is completely correct and is the right course of action. So we have to tip our caps to Pete and to Jake. DeGrom, you know, the funny thing about DeGrom is that he started out this season pretty poorly, and then he very quietly almost duplicated the season that he had last year in 2018. He pitched so well in the second half. He had a sub-2 ERA, led the National League in strikeouts. Just a phenomenal season for DeGrom. And now we're at the point where, you know, coming into 2019, we all sort of said, man, can Jake ever top this season? And now, I mean, he didn't top it. He never will. That 2018 season that DeGrom put together, win total notwithstanding, was one of the best seasons I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen a pitcher do that before. I mean, he was in like Red Sox Pedro level, fantastic. So to have been able to put up the numbers that he did this season, which, not comparing against last year, would have been like one of the best seasons ever, and he goes and just does it back to back, and it just shows that Brody was smart to extend DeGrom when he did. Yes, the Mets have him now for the next 5 or 6 years. There's an option in the middle there, but the point to this is that Jacob DeGrom is a pitcher. He's really smart, and he's going to age well, in my opinion. I think he's going to do fine into the later years of his contract. He's not going to be a burden or an albatross or anything like that on this team. His salary will be high, but he'll still be getting the job done at that point. That's my prediction. It's worth mentioning also about Pete Alonso's Rookie of the Year. He also finished 5th in the MVP voting, which that's pretty fantastic too. I think it was 5th. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I know he got a couple of top 3 or top 5 votes, and I want to say he finished 5th. I really do. I think he might have finished 5th. But, you know, Pete is going to be faced with the same thing that Jake was faced this year going into 2020. So for Alonso, the question is going to be, can he duplicate the season that he just put together? And I don't want to say it's going to be harder for DeGrom to do, or sorry, harder for Alonso to sort of two-peat, to go back-to-back seasons like he just did, because the season that he just had was historic, not for a rookie, for any player. I mean, he out of the gates was just a red-hot MVP type player. Honestly, if the Mets make the playoffs, I think he gets more MVP votes. I really do. He was the most valuable player on this team, although you could argue that DeGrom was. I'm going to say it was Pete, because Pete did it every single day. And while Jake was great, and always will be, he can only do his job every fifth day. And Alonso carried the team for the rest of the season. So Alonso is the MVP for me. And the question looking forward for Pete is going to be, can he repeat? Can he do this again? And if he doesn't, how will that impact him going forward? That's the real question. He, at this point, I think we can all see that he's a really mature, really humble, really down-to-earth kid who loves to play this game, who puts his best foot forward every time, who gives the utmost effort every time, who battles through injury every time. He is an absolute gamer. He always will be. And I'm just glad he's a Met. And I don't predict that he's going to have a sophomore slump where he's going to be bad next year. But I will say he's not going to duplicate the numbers he put up in 2019 going forward. So that's my awards recap. Now let's get into the other big news of MLB over the last week or so. And it's this whole the Astros are cheaters debate and questioning of the new Mets manager, Carlos Beltran. Here's my hot take on this. I don't care. And here's why. Every team has video cameras in their stadiums. Every team is clocking pitchers and tracking pitchers and tracking pitches. It is the evolution of the game, where in the past you had to go back into the clubhouse to watch film and watch video. Today you can sit on the dugout, hold a tablet in your hand, and watch an HD feed of a video and rewind it and fast forward and zoom in and look at what you did in the previous at bat when you get into the dugout. It is the evolution of technology. It's the evolution of the game. The Astros are guilty of using technology to their advantage. But in my opinion, it's only it's a step further than what they're doing today. Everything evolves. The game always evolves. Now, do I say that it should be allowed? No, I don't think it should be allowed. But they pushed the envelope. MLB caught them. That's it. Now it's up to MLB to correct this going forward, because the reality is I don't think teams should be able to cheat like that. However, I do think that teams should be allowed to steal signs the old-fashioned way, where a grizzled veteran like a Carlos Beltran, like an Alex Cora, can sit on the bench and notice ticks in a pitcher's delivery and know that something is coming or not coming. That is sign stealing, and there's nothing wrong with that. Catcher's going to be lazy and not flash and cover signs, or not change up the signs, and there's a runner on second base and that runner can pick up signs. Good for him. There's nothing wrong with that. Using a high-def camera to zoom in on the catcher, that's not cool going forward. I don't know that there's any way that Beltran or Cora can be punished, but I think someone's head's going to roll for this. And I honestly, I don't care that much. I really don't. I just feel like there's always a way to get around these things. Whether it be coming up with a different methodology of how you deliver signs, what the pattern might be, but this whole convoluted clap once, bang on the trash can thing, I don't know. There's just some piece missing there. I'm not saying the Astros didn't relay signs and didn't use technology to get an advantage over their opponents. I'm just not 100% sure on this delivery method and how that whole thing could have worked. And the most important part as it relates to the Mets is I don't see how Carlos Beltran can be punished for this as a player on that team. And honestly, if Beltran gets punished, then so too should every other player on the team, including Mike Fiers, who should be forced to give his ring back. Because he didn't seem to mind when it was his team teeing off on other pitchers. He just was bothered by the fact that it was happening to other teams now that he's not on the Astros. So there's a bit of a double-edged sword with that. The whole Fiers whistleblower thing, where it was good for you then, but now not so good. I don't know. The bottom line is I don't think this relates to the Mets at all. I think MLB has a mess to clean up, and I don't trust them at all to clean it up properly. So, not really a hot take, but really, I guess the hot take is I don't give a shit. Figure it out. Figure it out, and don't make it so public, and figure it out. That's MLB's job. So, that's how I feel about that. Finally, I will be back, hopefully, to a regular schedule as of this Wednesday. So hopefully I can be back on Wednesday and talk a little bit about what the Mets need to start doing in the offseason. The general manager meetings were last week. The winter meetings are right around the corner, and I want to be talking about the Mets' needs. You're hearing all of these things on other podcasts and other shows, but I'm going to start giving my opinion on what I think the Mets ought to be doing going forward. So that's to come later this week. So until then, I thank you for watching, as I always do. I appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter if you're not already doing so at Mr_Met. It's MISTER_MET. And as always, let's go Mets.